So in the last 3 months, my clipping agency has made over $140,000. And I'll hit a quick refresh here. And a lot of you guys that know me know my agency runs aside from just the WAP platform. And the actual number, not including WAP, would be around 270. So a little bit close to double in the last 3 months. I know what you're thinking. I'm just another guy online that made a bunch of money that's trying to sell you something. Now, true, I am trying to sell you something, but at least I give you a bunch of free value on my YouTube. So it's going to be a totally free course going over exactly my model for how to run a clipping agency. I would suggest to take out a pen and notebook. I like to write shit down. I feel like it's better. You retain more information, but you could take notes in really any way you want. So the first thing we're actually going to start is how to actually sign your first client in your clipping agency. Because what I've noticed from people is that when they actually start any type of agency, especially a clipping agency, most people quit before they end up even signing their first client. I think that's where most people struggle with. They might have a bad outreaching system. They try it for not long enough. They have a good system, but they only try it for 7 days, 14 days. And then they go back playing Fortnite and gooning. It's to each their own, I guess. But the first thing you want to do is actually go ahead and pick your niche. Now, you could go ahead and try to sign any type of client in the world, especially at the beginning. You're not really looking for to make, $100,000 off one client. You're really looking for testimonial because this is going to be the most important tool you use for your future clients going forward. But I would actually suggest that instead of trying to pick every single client that you can, if you could master a certain niche within getting clients, it's really going to help you. So what do I mean by this? So the first niche we got here is entrepreneur with ENT. Right? So these are going to be the guys like the coaches, the business owners, and there is a massive audience for this. This is honestly one of my favorite niches to go for because you have to understand, even if these guys have 10,000, 20,000 followers, even less, and they're willing to grow on social media, they're not just growing on social media to get money from the YouTube platform or the Instagram platform, TikTok platform. If they get 20,000 followers, they're going to make tons of money, whatever they're selling. Maybe they're a real estate developer. Maybe, they sell a course, probably sell a course, but they're going to make a lot more money based on how much views you could get them. So these guys are going to have a lot bigger budgets. They're going to be richer when you sign them, and they're going to be able to get a lot richer when you get them more views. So this is one of my favorite niches. I mean, there's so much entrepreneurs online that need clipping, and it's actually a good thing now. Guys like TJR and Brez Scales are getting super popular because now even the younger audience is seeing how important clips is to go viral. Think about how pretty famous these guys got and how much money they made from the clipping model. So now the next niche I want to talk about is influencers. So these are going to be your YouTubers, your Twitch streamers, even Instagram guys that have a bunch of followers. For me, these are great testimonials. Like we have at our agency, we have guys like Sketch and, Nick Narcina, who else? Nelk Boys. These are all like influencer types. And these are cool testimonials to have. When I tell future clients, I've done campaigns for these guys and I work with some of these guys, it gives me credibility. And that's really what all it does. Because at the end of the day, unless you're a Kai Cenat, unless you're like a top tier influencer, which most of you guys, it's very unrealistic to sign, especially near the beginning. They're not going to have that much money to spend. Even if somebody has 1 million subs on YouTube, say he's a gamer, how much is he going to be able to put in? A few thousand a month? It's really not worth it. So I would do it if you could find it with a testimonial helping your agency. But like I said before, sometimes it isn't always about making money off the first couple of clients. It's really about the testimonial. But for most of you guys, it's unrealistic to get a really big client in this space. So I would probably just not include it at all. The next niche we're going to be talking about are artists. Rappers, whatever. So we have a lot of artists, guys like Little Tecca we've done very successful with, and, a bunch of DaBaby, all these guys. And these are kind of similar to the influencers. Unless you're getting a big A-list artist that has, the record label has a lot of money, it's going to be very hard to sign them. And if you're a mid-size, small artist, especially if you don't have a record label, you basically have no money. And it's going to be really impossible to do clips. The great thing about artists is that a lot of the time, these record labels have a lot of money to spend when you can actually find the big clients. And it's usually based on audio deals. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, the next niche we're going to be talking about are actual companies, right? So, and I think I spelled that right. Okay, I didn't go to school. So companies is probably the most overlooked niche in clipping because people don't usually think, when they think of clips being out on the internet, they don't necessarily think with brands. They more think in the essence of influencers, streamers, entrepreneurs, and like actually people on podcasts, people in, their life and things like this. But if you could be creative enough, especially with UGC style content, you can make a lot of money with this niche. Some of our clients, like CPI, has spent, it's literally a stem cell company. You would think, how the hell would you clip up a stem cell company? But we used a bunch of clips from different athletes talking about stem cells, Joe Rogan talking about stem cells, even the owner of CPI going on podcasts. And, CPI spent 100K a month with us. So companies is probably one of the most overlooked niches because there's so much subsectors and companies and brands that you could do clipping and UGC for. And I want you guys to understand that these really are just main niches. You could really get very particular. And even if you say you wanted to run a clipping agency just for e-commerce, we have a lot of people in the group that do clipping for different languages. So one guy does only Latin clipping because he speaks Spanish. Some guys do only French clipping and they only do clippers for France. If you could know another language, if you could be, maybe a little bit about e-commerce, you could really crush, because at the end of the day, you're not trying to get them a bunch of views for fun and followers and likes. You're trying to get them conversions. So someone that knows about e-commerce stores, that comes from that business model or whatever business model in general, could really help that company grow, not just with short form and clipping, but actually help them convert on their site. So obviously the first thing you need to do is actually pick your niche. And I wouldn't even be scared to go super niche, super technical, even if it's a certain type of software companies or, people think that there's not enough market for these kind of things. At the end of the day with a clipping agency, all you need is a couple, 2, 3, 4 clients. You could be making a lot of money. You don't need hundreds of clients. Now, after you pick your niche, obviously we have to get to the outreaching phase. And this is everyone's part where they struggle with the most. So there's 2 really paths you could go down. And the first one we're going to be talking about is just using different platforms to outreach as much as humanly possible. So the common thing that people mistake with outreaching to on these platforms is that they'll DM people on Instagram and they'll copy and paste the same message and DM over and over again, the same paragraph, the same bullshit script. And you have to understand, I'm someone with 175,000 followers. Even someone like me gets hundreds of DMs of these guys trying to help my conversions, trying to help this, trying to help my content. You're not going to stand out. So you could go and DM 1,000 times, 10,000 times in a month with the same DM script. Yeah, eventually you're going to get some responses. Yeah, you're going to maybe get some calls. But why are you playing the game on hard mode? So the first thing I want to talk about is something called POC, points of contact. So instead of actually just DMing someone's Instagram, you should be looking for their TikTok as well. Because if they have Instagram, they probably have TikTok. And if they have TikTok, they might have X. They probably have an email in their bio of their Instagram, and they might have a Discord, they might have a LinkedIn. So you have to actually take your time on each potential client and try to get the most points of contact as possible. Because now you could have just DM'd someone on Instagram, but now you could have 5x your chance with hitting multiple platforms. Some people like to check their X DMs. Some people, aren't that big on TikTok, so maybe you stand out more in the inbox. Some people only read their emails. Maybe their manager's there. Discord's a great tool. You could open up a ticket and, people love to see that because a lot of their customers, and that's where they get a lot of their customer support. So they're always looking at their ticket. And really what we're going to be focusing on is spending more time per client other than just sending out volume loads of messages, which of course volume helps as well. Eventually, volume is going to get you results, but why can't you have volume and actually have quality and spend time a little bit on the outreaching sequence? So now let's get to everyone's favorite topic. Scroll up, DM, outreaching, and scripts. So everyone thinks I have some special scripts that I DM people that gets me all these big clients. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm not going to give you a script that's going to make you, have Drake at your doorstep. It's just not possible. But obviously, some scripts are better than others. Some scripts could get you more replies, better messaging sequences, but there's no magical script. But I wanted to put this example up here because I thought it was pretty important. And this isn't really a good outreaching message, but it's Yo Millie brand reaching out to a few brands and creators in my audience. Would you be interested in a clipping army that could push out thousands of posts of your streams on our behalf? And guess what? If we don't get views, you don't even have to pay. This little guarantee was all right, but really it's not a good outreaching DM. The only important part of this DM and why I wanted to show it was that it shows off another point of POC, another point of contact. So this client I was actually messaging that I was trying to sign to my agency was Nick Nursina, a pretty big influencer with millions of followers. Instead of me just messaging Nick, which I probably replaced this with Nick and sent them the same DM, I actually went to his following and looked through his profile and tried to find somebody that was related to him, connected to him in any way. And I found out his clothing brand, right? So this was the perfect person to DM. I DM'd it. I got in contact. They said, yo, text this number. I texted it. I was on call with their manager, which is the perfect person you want to be for this kind of stuff. And I closed them in the next 2 days. So this is the lesson that's important. All I did was spend an extra 2 minutes, and I think it was even in his bio, maybe this account. But all I did was spend an extra 2 minutes to find another point of contact, and it ended me signing a deal with a pretty big influencer, right? If I never did this, I would have just never made that money. So now when we talk about actual what text to say in the DM, there's a few important things. At the end of the day, I could give you a long list of templates of different things to say, but you could use ChatGPT for that. I can't give you a magical script that's going to work. I can only tell you what you could do in the inbox to make you more seen. That's really all I could do. So you could use this per se, but what I like better is voice messages, right? So voice messages are less known in the inbox. You're going to stand out more. It's going to be more personalized, but also it takes a lot more time, right? You can't really just copy and paste the same voice message. I'm pretty sure you probably can in some way, but usually when I make a voice message, it's going to be somewhat personalized to the person. I'm going to say their name. I'm going to say something that we do. You know, for me, I say some testimonials that I've had in the past, and the voice message is going to stand out. Not only are you going to be more seen in the inbox, once they actually listen to you, at least they hear your voice, and now they trust you just a little bit more. So I always liked voice messages. A big thing for me too is Loom videos. You know, a lot of people catch my eyes even in my inbox when they send me a Loom, because, you know, this takes the most amount of time. You might make a 1-2 minute Loom and it's personalized, but if you get them to watch that video, they're at least going to respond. It's very rare that someone's going to watch your Loom and not at least give you some sort of feedback, unless you're just, you know, retarded and you're just, you know, like retarded, right? But other than that, yeah, voice messages and Loom, those are your best options. And even if you are going by text, which I see a lot of people succeed with it, there's a few things I want to point out with text that could really help your conversion. So the thing you're going to notice about Instagram and even other platforms is they're going to cap you around 50 to 100 DMs a day, right? And it varies per platform, but this is usually what it is. I want you to understand that, yes, you're going to be capped per account of how much you could DM, but they're never going to cap you of how much you could re-message somebody. So what you should be doing after you send your, say, 100 per day, you should always be going back to your inbox to people that maybe seen your DM or just never looked at it at all. And just everyone that hasn't responded, or maybe they responded and stopped responding, this is where the sequence comes in. So this would usually be after, say, 3 days if they don't respond. Hey, you could send a little period. You could send, you know, hey, any updates? And okay, I could explain this. You don't have to say, want to lick my balls, but I've seen this in my inbox and it absolutely caught my eye and it made me open the DM. So saying something completely stupid as the last message, like your last hope, is going to make you stick out. As stupid as you think this is, it's actually going to help you. And I've seen other coaches say some stupid shit as the last message just so you open the DM. That's your only goal. At the end of the day, you're not trying to, you know, people type in long paragraphs trying to make sure that they have every single bonus a part of their offer, every single guarantee. It doesn't matter. We want them to just open the inbox. We want them to look at our profile. We don't need to spill, you know, 15 paragraphs of what exactly we do for them. They're not going to be wowed. And honestly, the longer the message, the worse it is. It should come off chill. It should come off like one liner. You know, hey, want clipping for your content. Now, okay, that's not the best, but this would be better than sending a long paragraph. I think this one is actually better than this DM here, right? Now, the want to lick my balls, okay, if it's a girl client, I mean, you might have to, don't use that. And, you know, say something else. You don't have to go that crazy, but saying something stupid like this is really going to make them open it a lot more. And I know it's a joke, but it's actually worked on me, or at least, you know, made me open it. So I want you guys to understand that all these DMs and all these scripts and from all these platforms should all be leading to a single call. And that's pretty obvious, right? But I noticed with a lot of people with a clipping agency and any type of business model now, the internet made everything so easy that people really don't want to do any type of business skills at all. People really want to run a 100K a month business and not even hop on a call with somebody. If you think that you're going to sign a client through text on a $10,000 deal, you might as well turn off the YouTube video. And I understand the appeal to it. You want to run a business completely faceless, completely anonymous, and you could totally run this business faceless. But if you think you're not going to have to communicate with anyone, if you want to make a bunch of money with any actual real businesses, you're going to have to learn real skills. But most of you guys already know that. So another outreaching strategy that I haven't personally used myself, but I've seen a lot of my students do pretty good with this, and it's actually Googling different niches and businesses in your area. Because if you're a new clipping agency, you might not have that testimonial to really convince someone. And that's why a lot of people quit at first. And everyone starts somewhere. At the end of the day, you're going to have to get over the hump of signing your first client. And sometimes getting someone like this, especially, I'm from Toronto. So having at least the same city as me gives me some sort of connection, some sort of testimonial. It's not great. And now I could skip all this part where I'm DMing and I could get right on the phone with these people. Now, of course, these are going to be a lot more cold leads. Half these guys aren't even interested in doing social media. So you probably have to look through their websites, see if they have a social media, see if they're looking to grow it, see if they're posting it all. And you might think that how would clipping really relate to something like a dealership or maybe a gym or stuff like this? At the end of the day, what a clipping agency is a short form content agency. So if you could help them create short form content, you don't need thousands of clippers every client. Sometimes you having one clipper where you charge a client is $3,000 to post 3 times a day and help them with the system, a few bonuses, and you could really blow them up with a good clipper. That's a beautiful business model. Why wouldn't you want to do that? You have to deal with one clipper posting and you get $3,000 and your margins are crazy. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So I've seen a lot of my students get some clients like this. Now, with something like this, I wouldn't necessarily suggest for all of you because you have to be really resilient. You're not going to call 10 people and get a sign. You're going to have to call hundreds and hundreds of people in your area, learn how to, speak to them, and eventually get them on a Zoom meeting where you have a presentation for them, because you're not going to be able to sell them right on call, right? Usually you're going to call 2 minutes, tell the guy, hey, give me 2 minutes. Are you interested in running a social media and growing your social media? Most of the people are going to just hang up on you, say no. And then maybe after the 10th one, you get one kind of interested guy. You're going to have to basically call hundreds to land maybe 5-10 calls. But if you could do that within a week and land a few bookings, hey, you're going to be past a lot of these guys that are, DMing shitty scripts and spending all day trying to DM the same copy and paste message for, people do this for months and end up never signing a client. Now, here's the actual truth, right? I could give you the best DM scripts in the world, but at the end of the day, what's really important is your actual personal brand. Now, I understand not everyone wants to be famous, not everyone wants to get a bunch of followers and make a bunch of videos, but we all have a personal brand to an extent. Even if you don't use social media, you have a brand in your community. People know you for something. People neglect this a lot of the times when it comes to business. And even if you're someone that doesn't want to make videos, you should be still trying to increase your personal brand, at least having a presentable image that you're DMing from. Because at the end of the day, if you think that you are going to have one post on Instagram or a couple posts where you don't even show your face and run a full-blown clipping agency, people are just not going to trust you. It's that simple. And forget the clipping agency. Run any type of business model, right? Where you have to use your social media to get clients, where you have to use your social media in any type of way. Have fun never getting any clients and never making any money. So you do eventually have to take this seriously. I don't care how old you are. You could be creative. You could just post pictures and at least have some sort of image on there. The best would obviously be making videos like someone like myself. And this obviously helps me, but we don't actually necessarily need to have a bunch of followers. The question is, do you actually need a personal brand to run this? And the quick answer is no. We've seen a lot of people that don't have big Instagrams at all, maybe a few thousand followers, personal Instagrams. They don't even talk about clipping. They just have a few pictures up that run $50,000, $60,000 a month agencies. The answer is no, you don't need a personal brand, but it's going to help. I also want to show you guys a real example of this. So one of our students in our program, Jesus, actually really started doubling down on his personal brand. And we talk a little bit about the personal brand in the program. And he attacks the Spanish market. So he used the advice of the subsector niche, where he doesn't have to go for every single massive client. He goes for a lot of the Latin American influencers, artists, and things like this. And he just set up a podcast with his boy talking shit, talking about the business with decent content. And now he has 47 clients booked in the next 14 days. I want you guys to understand, it's August 20th right now. Before the end of the month, this guy has 47 calls with different clients. the amount of money this guy is going to make, and he's already signed a bunch of clients with a lot of these videos and a lot of these content. So you guys have to understand one thing: you need to be in front of the camera. I'm not saying you have to try to make videos, but like you have to get to the point where who really gives a shit? It's going to help any business that you ever have. I don't care even if you have a software company that has nothing to do with you. Talking about your product and getting a big personal brand, why do you think all the richest guys have personal brands? Because it helps their companies. So this isn't a personal brand course, but it's just something to think about. And Jesus was testimonial to this, right? He locked in his personal brand, and now he's not trying to get a bunch of outbound leads by DMing thousands of times. He probably doesn't even need to DM anymore. He's getting all inbound leads. And once he gets one comes to the next. Once you get more testimonials, it becomes easy. So obviously, if you're someone that actually truly doesn't want to show their face on camera, of course, there's different strategies that people use. Like this guy will take, viral streamer clips talking about clipping and kind of just point at his computer. Now, these obviously are very good for views. It's going to get you a lot of followers and a lot of clippers in your group. But are they going to be the most trustworthy for clients? Probably not, right? And you're definitely going to be able to sign clients like this, but at least you need some pictures that showing that you're a real person on Instagram. Now, the question is, and we kind of asked this before, do you actually need a big personal brand to sign clients? And the quick answer is really no, because we've seen some of the biggest clipping agencies that are making 50, 60, 70K a month without personal brands, with just simple Instagrams, with just normal pictures. Now, with that being said, like I said before, everyone has a personal brand. So maybe you don't want to make videos and become a content creator, but if you look at something like this, now obviously this is ChatGPT, you're not going to be posting flowers on your Instagram, I hope not, but this is just to show an example of someone that has no profile picture, no bio, no posts, to compare to someone that's buying the blue check, which is, everyone should be doing if you're sending DMs, having a profile picture where you could see your face, and having pictures of yourself on your profile. This obviously should have a bio, showing that your bio, even some content, highlights, anything about clipping and about a clipping agency is going to show people that you're more of an expert in this space. Because the first thing someone's going to do if they open your DM is actually check through your profile. And if you're just, if you have a bio that says, I run clipping for brands, you have a few pictures up, it could work. You could definitely get them if you're good on call, but you're just playing on hard mode. So having different highlights, maybe even having videos of you talking about it, you have to break that fear of being in front of the camera. It's really going to help, not only, even if you don't run a clipping agency in the future, I don't really care. A personal brand is always going to help your business. You have to remember that. So now I want to get into kind of the biggest lie with running a clipping agency. So what is kind of the biggest conception of a clipping agency that's not necessarily true? So everyone thinks that you need to sign all these big clients to make a lot of money. And the truth is, even though these are great testimonials like Shaq, Sketch, Bryce, Nick, and a few others, and we've made a lot of money from these guys, the most money that we've actually made is more of our private, smaller creators, right? Because a lot of these guys, even though they had a lot of money, and we're going to get into it, sometimes aren't the best clients, and sometimes really just aren't the best margins either. So now we're going to get into that part. So now the next topic we're going to be talking about is how to actually charge your clients, because we don't want to get to the position where we're outreaching and trying to sign a new client and we end up getting responses and getting on call and we just don't know how to give them a payment structure or really give them an offer to take. So the first thing you want to do before even having your payment structure is figuring out where you're going to host your clippers and clients. Now, we personally use WAP. You could use Discord. We even sometimes use Telegram for, private deals and things like this. I like WAP. I'm not partnered by them in any way, but I like them because they already have the content reward system. These are great for tracking views. And obviously, usually what people use it for is pay-per-view, and we'll get into that. So you could use Discord as well. They have Discord bots for clippers and stuff. But if you're a new agency, it's probably a lot easier just to use WAP. So basically what I was talking about before with the biggest lie of the clipping agency is that everyone thinks that you need to be using this WAP content rewards where you have to pay per views. And we definitely use it a lot, and it's a great tool for big influencers and creators. But for a lot of you guys that are new to starting a clipping agency, it's really not going to make any sense. And I'm going to give you a new method that's going to make you a lot more money, and it's going to actually allow you to keep clients and make more margins off them. So the thing about the content rewards when you're paying people per 1,000 views, a lot of the times you run into bots, which can be mostly prevented. You run into expensive campaigns. So it's expensive for the clients, especially for smaller clients. And you also run into lower margins because how much can you really take off a deal like this? Maybe 30, 35% at most. The reason why I say it's expensive because you have to understand if you're signing a new client, you're not necessarily going to sign someone like, Kai Cenat or Aiden Ross. So you're going to actually have to make this RPM here or the CPM pretty high. It's going to have to be probably $2, $3 per thousand views because why would somebody with all of the different agencies and all of the different clipping deals from the different clients, why would a clipper on WAP, when they have so much groups to choose from, join your group that's probably not even promoted that well, clip up for your client at the same rate that it could be clipping up Brez Scales or TJR? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So you're almost competing with a lot of these other agencies when you're doing this RPM method. And it's either that you're going to have to bump this up to a crazy number where it's going to be super expensive for your client, or you're just going to have it at a normal range and no one's going to join your group and no one's going to clip for you. It's that pretty simple. This is the reason why I love the retainer model. So what we were just talking about is charging clients per views, right? So this is, say you have an example for a budget for WAP, you're going to take around 15 to 30% commission, which is going to be $700 to $1,500, and maybe you take up a setup fee and retainer, 5 to 10% of the budget, and it's going to be fixed. So is it still decent margins? And these definitely still work. Trust me, we have over 30, 35 clients with WAP. We obviously make a lot of money from the system. I'm not shitting on it, but I think for a lot of smaller clients that you get that aren't super viral, it's going to be very hard running this type of system. But to each their own, right? And the margins are pretty decent. Now, obviously 30% is what we take, and big retainers is what we take. But if you're a new agency, you might have to start even on the lower end, so you might not be making that much, and the margins might be closer to 15, 20% in total. So now going over to the next model, which is the retainer model, which I brought out this pretty big graph to show you, and it's not that complicated. The first thing I want you guys to realize is that my prices don't have to be yours. You could always, do it for cheaper. This is actually pretty expensive how I wrote it because it's really for my agency. These aren't the exact prices I use, but this is going to be pretty expensive. And the only reason we do it is because we rather lose a client and then give them a discount, right? But for a lot of you guys, especially near the beginning, you could probably do this for a lot cheaper. So the way it's going to work is instead of them paying for views, they're actually going to be paying for accounts and posts. So say they want to pay $2,500 in retainer. They're going to get 2 to 3 unique clips a day. So this is really what you have to worry about. You wouldn't really say this to them. And it would be around 60 to 90 unique clips a month. And say it's 4 platforms. Maybe they want TikTok, IG, and just YouTube Shorts. Maybe they want to add Facebook. They're a little bit older. And X is optional, right? So in total, it's going to be around 8 to 12 total posts a day and around 240 to 360. Now remember, this is quite expensive for $2,500. You could definitely get it closer to 500 to 600 posts a month for them, even up to 1,000 and still be pretty profitable. But usually the amount this is going to cost you is around 500 to 750. You're going to have to find clippers that are actually really good at this because this whole model sucks if you're using a bunch of shitty clippers. The whole point of this is using a small group of quality clippers that you make better margins with and gets the client more views, right? This isn't just to make more money on our end. We want the client to be spending less per 1,000 views than the other model. So even good clippers, especially from different countries, you could get them from 500, maybe all the way up to 1,000 at most. But a lot of our clippers we're paying 500 to 750 a month. And they do pretty good. You're going to have to fire some are going to suck, some are going to be lazy. But the good thing about this is that this is going to leave you, remember this is pretty expensive, so this is going to be a little bit high of an estimate, but this is going to leave you around a 70 to 80% gross margins compared to something like this might be around 30%. Because if somebody's spending 10 grand with me, and even this is a little bit low, say you run 15 unique clips a day, four platforms, you're posting whatever 2,000 posts in total. Even if you're spending $3,500 on clippers, which could probably even be less, why would I want to get a $10,000 client and only be making, $3,000 off this business model? I don't want to make 30% commissions. If you want to run a successful agency, your margins got to be over 60, over 70, even 80%. Because you got to be able to get to the point where you have 3 clients and you're making a good amount of money. The problem with a lot of agency owners is that they're not making enough per sale and there's a lot of overhead. For something like this, it's less overhead and I'm making a lot per sale. I have around maybe 12 clients in total on this kind of retainer deal. Anyway, ranging from, we don't really go lower than 5,000, but anywhere ranging from 5,000 up to even 30,000, right? I'm getting over, sometimes 60, 70, even 80% margins on these clients. I don't have to worry too much. And all I really do, of course, I have an admin managing all of them, making sure the clippers are posting. We obviously still do use WAP. I think it's a great platform for tracking. So we usually put like a $2 content reward thing. I'm not going to show you how to set it up. You can search up on YouTube. We'll really just put $2 and then make the clippers post our links in here. Just a good way to track all the views so we don't have to do it manually. So WAP's is still good a platform for that. But doing this model is so much better for me. It's so much better for the client. And we've noticed, especially if the client can stay for a few months, it's going to end up being cheaper, because a lot of these guys that you're going to sign don't need to be the next Andrew Tate right away. They need to start off with 5 sub accounts, start them off, and then if they become super famous and viral, then you could start with pay-per-view. But right now, 99% of you should be using this model. Don't even think about the WAP pay-per-view right now. Of course, I still use WAP as a platform for this kind of stuff to track views, but I wouldn't necessarily pay them out through the view program. And the one thing about the retainer model, I guess you could say, is a con, and what people don't like about it, is that they feel like to clients, it doesn't seem as good of a deal. You're basing it off accounts, and like, it's really not that much accounts. It's a decent amount of posts, but something like a pay-per-view where you're guaranteeing them views for a certain amount of money, it feels way better for the client, way less risk. And I get it. The pitch could sound a lot better with this, but as long as you frame it in a way and explain it why this is better than this model, and it really just comes from trust of your agency. Like, I took so much clients that we had on WAP, and I said, hey, we have this new strategy here. We're using retainers. I'm going to show you why this will do better. And all those guys have stayed with the retainer model. They're going to stay months and months. If I'm running, if someone's spending $10,000 with me, and we'll usually do more accounts than this, say that we're running, 4 platforms, 8, that's going to be like what? Like 15 accounts, 20 accounts, right? Total accounts. Do you think even a few of those accounts grow to 20, 30, 50K followers after like 2-3 months? Do you think they're ever going to leave the program? They've already converted. As long as their conversion on their website is okay, that one account is going to make them more than $10,000 a month for the most part. And I'll have this pricing structure chart in the link in description so you guys could steal it, use it for potential clients. At least you'll have an idea. Maybe you will have to do more posts or run more accounts for, a little bit cheaper. Especially if you're a new agency, but nonetheless, it will be in the link in the description. And I hope this was a little bit good mini course on how to outreach people and sign your first client. And I'll see you guys in the next video.